Hi, everybody. Karen Kring here, and I'm with Dorothy Tucker today. Dorothy Tucker, some of you might know, she's a reporter for CBS 2 in Chicago, and she's been doing that since the mid-'80s. Currently, she's on the station's 2 investigator team. She is the president of the National Association of Black Journalists, NABJ. She's graduated with honors from Northwestern University. What you might not know is she's a Chicago native. She was raised in Chicago, Lawndale and Austin communities, and currently lives in Hyde Park. Welcome, Dorothy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. So what have you been up to? What have you been working on this week?
I will tell you generally, there's one story that I'm working on that is coronavirus related.
Yeah.
And there is another story that I'm working on that is related to police defunding, police brutality. Both of those stories are really kind of looking at the facts, and hopefully will tell people things that they didn't know, that they didn't realize, and draw some connections to revealing things that are questionable.
Sure. So thank you for that. Yeah, I've been asking everybody I've been talking to, we're in episode 4 now, this journalism thing, what were you thinking? Like what drew you into this profession?
The Chicago public school system.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I am the public of CPS education, and I was a sophomore at Austin High School. And there was a citywide program called Introduction to Radio Broadcasting, where they would choose one student from every school. And I was chosen from my school to participate in this program. And what it meant is that for my junior year and my senior year, we would travel downtown and have a class once a week that lasted for 4 hours every Tuesday during my junior year, every Thursday during my senior year. And, during that time, it was an introduction to the world of broadcasting. It included trips to theater, to television stations around the city, to museums. So it was a real cultural experience, as well as an education in the city, as well as just kind of, we would do stories on different things happening at the various high schools, and really learn how to write them for radio and produce them for radio. So, I was bitten by the broadcast bug at a very early age, and knew since I was 16 years old that I wanted to do something in broadcasting.
Wow, that's fantastic. So you then went on to Northwestern, and while you're at Northwestern, you had an internship at CBS 2.
Yes.
And I understand that after that, you went on to jobs in Pittsburgh, Denver, Memphis, and Peoria, and then somehow got your way back to CBS. And so,
well, I actually started flip that around. I mean, you started in a small market. I started in Peoria,
right,
and with a CBS affiliate, and then I went to an independent station in Denver, and then I went back to a CBS affiliate in Memphis, and another CBS affiliate, God, I didn't realize that, in Pittsburgh, before coming back home to Chicago. So, I traveled around for about 7 years, various cities, learning more and more and more before being fortunate enough to get the job at CBS 2.
What drew you back to Chicago?
It was always a dream of mine. I mean, I'm from the city. I love the city. My parents, my sister, my brother, host of relatives and friends, all of them were here. So I wanted to come back for that reason. But I think perhaps even a bigger reason is just the market. Chicago is, in my opinion, by far the best journalism market in the country. Mm-hmm. People here are very educated when it comes to the news. They're informed. and they are not afraid to hold you accountable. They're not afraid to reach out, and so that happens in other cities. But for example, in a city like Los Angeles, I think the media competes with Hollywood.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different. In New York, the news media competes with Broadway. We
Sure.
don't have those kind of distractions here. So it's, I think it's in some regards just more rewarding to have the opportunity to work in Chicago. My colleagues around the country probably disagree with that, but I hope they feel as strongly about the city they're working in as I do about mine.
We don't have TV and movie stars, and we don't have Broadway stars here, but we've got our politicians and we have our athletes. And I would say our stars are our news people. So.
In some regards, you're absolutely right, because we're the ones that people watch, especially those who are in front of the camera. We're the ones that watch on television or listen to on the radio, and they feel as if they know us, and that's a good thing.
What do you feel like is your mandate? What do you feel that you owe your viewership as you do your job? What is it you want them to take away from your reports?
For me, it is important that I'm trusted, that people know that when I do a story, it is going to be fair, it's going to be balanced, and it's going to be informative. I hope that I have a reputation of bringing something extra to the table, of really looking at a story from 3 or 4 different angles, and making sure that at the heart of the story, there's a connection to why you, the viewer, should care. So, my mandate is really to educate, and to inform, and to, when needed, to expose the wrong, to be the voice for those who sometimes feel like they aren't being listened to.
Has there ever been a time when you've done a story or you've worked on a project when you said to yourself, this is why I do this job. This is what, makes the crazy hours worth it. And you have any instances of feeling that way?
I think that happens periodically, and fortunately, it happens more often than not. I'm very fortunate in that I really, I love what I do, and I get an opportunity to choose stories that I think are important. I did a story a couple of weeks ago on the antibody test. And we looked at 3 different tests that had 3 different results, and really tried to raise the questions of why. So it wasn't just about the fact that these tests are, have a reputation for some of them being inaccurate. It was, we're just gonna take one person and have them take 3 different tests so that we can see what the results are. So we can show you that you really need to be careful with these tests, and you really kind of, at the end of the day, need to continue to protect yourself and follow all the safety guidelines. So that test, or that story rather, when I finished it, and knowing that there's probably somebody out there who might have been feeling, okay, well, I just got this test, and now I have immunity, and now I can go out and do what I want. Maybe my story made them hesitate. Maybe my story made them realize that, let me just kind of slow down a bit and continue to follow the safety guidelines, because it's possible that the positive they got for antibodies may have been inaccurate. So don't take that chance. Don't gamble like that. The tests aren't just quite there yet. Too many of them are inaccurate.
I think I saw that story, and I appreciated knowing that, because we're our lives are depending on it. So Dorothy, when you clock out at CBS Chicago at the end of the day, whenever that is, your day is not done. You continue your work with NABJ, National Association for Black Journalists. You are the president, and I'm curious as to what inspires your leadership in the organization.
You know, it's an opportunity to be an advocate for the 4,100 journalists that we have across the country and in some places around the world. You know, our mission has always been to advocate for journalists in the workplace, to fight for diversity and inclusion, and more than ever before, that is critical. And, you know, in this day and age, you know, with what we're seeing, we're in the middle of a racial reckoning. So we need to continue to make sure that our members, Black journalists, that they have a voice, that the biases, the racism, the microaggressions that they have experienced, that these issues are addressed.
Given the nature of the times, are news outlets coming to you for, you know, coming to NABJ and asking for help, or is now the time NABJ has to be pushing, or is it a combination of both?
It is definitely both. We are hearing from a number of news managers, and I have to tell you, it is very encouraging to hear news managers say, you know, I didn't really get it until now. I didn't understand until now. We have some issues that, yes, we need to address, and to want to have a discussion with me or other members on our board, and finally, more importantly, with the Black journalists in their newsrooms. So definitely people are coming to us. At the same time, there are incidents that are cropping up that, you know, we look at and we are very disheartened by what we are seeing about the allegations that are going on in small, large, in-network newsrooms. In those cases, we're the ones reaching out, saying that, you know, there needs to be a change, and that, you know, those incidents of racism, where, you know, reporters are just not treated fairly or not given the promotions and not paid the same, that those things have to be addressed.
During the last 30 years, at least, journalism has been challenged in a number of directions. Diversity and inclusion and equity in the newsroom is one challenge that is continuing. Another one is the nature of financing and what the internet has wrought. What is from your perch, where do you think things are going? Do you think that it's going to get better? Do you think it's going to get worse? A combination of both? In terms of, well, newsrooms are shrinking, and diversity and equity and inclusion is an issue that's being brought up now, and it has been challenging for newsrooms for a while. So are you thinking that things might get better, that given the nature of our times and information, solid information being so important, do you think there's going to be new respect and new funding and new life coming into the journalism profession? Because so many newsrooms have been decimated, and some papers have folded, and some aren't, as far as papers go, some aren't even in print anymore. So I was wondering, based on what your perspective is and what you've been seeing, where do you think the path is going to be for journalism and as a profession in the next 5 and 10 years?
That is a difficult question to answer because there are a number of different answers.
Yeah.
You could look at it, and you could, like you say, recognize that newspapers are folding. They're being forced to go online, that television stations, especially now with the pandemic, for both television broadcast and all of them, and newspapers and digital, they're definitely all suffering. Newspapers are definitely having a tough time making the revenue that they used to make 10, 15 years ago. But on the other hand, I think we are seeing many more grassroots news outlets. I think we're seeing many more community-based media groups. And I think that the newspapers are becoming more creative. I think you're going to see more and more of them, like you do, doing subscription-based, so that they can remain in business. I think television stations are streaming now. They're looking at other ways to make revenue and finding that the streaming is profitable. So I think it will evolve.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if you look at where we were, even 5, 7, 10 years ago, it looks very different. I think the next 10 years from now, who knows? But it's, now we're talking about people watching news and watching streaming news on their phones.
Right.
So we'll come up with a different device in order to get the news to people. But I think, television is here to stay, just like years ago. They thought radio was going to die. It didn't die.
Right.
I think radio is not going anywhere. I don't think newspapers are going anywhere. I think you will have fewer newspapers, as we already have seen. We've already seen that. But I think the trick is going to be being able to cover the news in a way that you attract the most people, that you attract a bigger audience. And, we all know that by the year 2040, the majority are going to be minorities. Mm-hmm. So it is critical. It helps the bottom line of these news organizations to not just think about being more inclusive, to not just make some changes, but they're going to really have to figure it out. And they're going to really have to be sincere about the changes and figure out how to make it last. Otherwise, they're not going to survive because people are not going to watch. And especially in this day and age, I've seen reports where consumers are looking at corporations and deciding what they're going to buy and where they're going to shop based on that or that corporation's social justice policy. Mm-hmm. So consumers are a lot smarter. And those same consumers are going to look at the print and the broadcast and the digital media and the streaming media, and they're going to see, well, what's your social justice policy?
Right.
And how do you cover these stories? And, and consumers are very educated. Mm-hmm. They know when they see the biases in coverage. Mm-hmm. They complain about that.
Yeah.
And, they're going to turn it off. They're going to not read that newspaper. They're not going to watch that television station. So, it is impacting, and it will continue to impact the bottom line. And I think that's why we're going to see the change.
Mm-hmm. There is an argument to be made that with so many news outlets, who do you trust? Who do you pay attention to? It's confusing, but I appreciate your point that on the other hand, news consumers are becoming more discerning, and they are paying attention to the social justice angles and corporate social responsibility. And if they are fulfilling the mandate, that what they're supposed to be doing for the public. So thank you. What do you think the general public should better understand about journalism and the job we do? Um, I I think it's really easy to read a piece or to watch um, a news channel and criticize how they do what they do, but I don't know that the public has very good insight into what goes into creating these stories.
I agree with you. And as we say, I think if the public understood how the sausage was made,
Right.
they would either not want to eat it or they would want to, devour more of it,
Hmm.
um, depending on their perspective. But, I think people think that we write these stories, in a matter of minutes. They think we stand in front of the television and then all of a sudden, there we go, and we're able to tell the story that when the story ends up on the newspaper, that somebody just sat down and, 20 minutes later typed it out.
Right.
Uh, and, we spend hours on a daily story and, days on some and then weeks on others. So, uh, you know, it's um, it's a stressful job,
Mhm.
especially when throughout all of it, you want to make sure that you have to be accurate.
Mhm.
You have to make sure that that information that you're putting out there is right.
Mhm.
That you aren't showing somebody in a negative light, that you're looking at both sides of the story, that you've asked all the questions and you've considered everything. And if you get a story pitch from somebody, you have to ask, well, what is their motive?
Right.
You don't want to be used either.
Mhm.
So it is a constant checking, and it takes time,
Mhm. A lot of vetting involved in
a lot of it.
sources and triple checking what you're putting out to make sure it's accurate. Um, so before you retire, before you hang it all up, is there anything in particular that you're looking forward to trying or doing or um, getting involved in as a journalist or as a media person?
I don't think at this point I can't think of that one thing that I want to cover or that I want to do. Um, I'm, as I said before, I've been very fortunate to work in a city where I was born, raised, and I have a lot of connections. So, for me, I get a sense of satisfaction with so many stories because I probably have some personal connection in some way,
Hmm.
bring that perspective to the story. So at this point, there isn't really one thing that I can think of,
Sure.
before I go. This is what I want to do. I don't know. I just want, I want people to just know that whatever the story is, that I pour my heart and soul into it, um, because I care, because this is my city, you know. So for me, I'm advocating on behalf of my people.
Hmm.
And when I say my, I'm not talking about just Black people. I'm talking about all people in the city of Chicago and in the suburbs, because that's what I do. I mean, that's what I signed up for, and that's what really rocks my boat. Is an opportunity to do a story that has an impact on the community and where people learn something.
Yeah. Sounds like you take it personally.
I do. I do. I mean, I take it personally because, if there is a shooting on the South Side, well, I live on the South Side. If there's a fire on the West Side and I see a headline that says West Side Fire, well, my first thought is this my dad's house? Is this my sister's house? Is, if there's a suburbs, is there a friend? If it's, I went to school at Northwestern, so I have lots of friends in the city and high school here. So, from me to a story is not 6 degrees of separation. There's a good possibility it's more like 3 degrees of separation. So, I do feel personally connected with, with so many stories. Children who went to public schools, and
Sure.
they played in the parks. So you do a story in Chicago Park District, they took lessons in the northern suburbs, different places. My son played soccer in Frankfurt and, Highland Park. So I've spent a lot of time.
You and your family are very much of the
Community.
region, and
Yeah,
you've got your ties everywhere, and
everywhere.
you want to be everywhere, or at least be able to report on any news in those communities, because it hits home.
Yeah, every day.
Yeah. Hey, so is there anything more we should talk about? Anything I missed asking you?
I don't think so. My family, being the mother of now 3 millennials, there's a lot that goes on that I get a perspective from the millennials' perspective, and that is always interesting and educational. But no, I think we're good.
We're good. Okay. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I know you've
Of
got
course.
a busy schedule between your day job and working on the convention for NABJ. It's going to be
Yeah.
virtual this year?
It is virtual, yes. August 5th through the 8th.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're doing a career fair. Where we probably got a good 75 companies that will be there virtually doing interviews. So, and we've got, 60, 70, 80 panels and workshops that will be going on topics, everything covering the pandemic to the protest to, data mining and, everything.
Everything that's up to date and new. And
Exactly.
so probably some classic topics as well. So,
Yep.
so anyway, good luck with the conference.
Thank you.
Convention, and thanks again for your time.
Thank you.
See
Take
ya.
care. Bye-bye.